this is a physical game, and at some points it's going to be physically violent, and it's just one of those things where we do gotta,
I got it. I got it.
we do have to work on that type of stuff in games just to see how that all will play out and see if I can get their trust for 60.
Now, and I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't around for those final 2 days of practice or anything like that. So were those days kind of a little bit more of the same, where there were a lot of flow drills and, kind of putting some game situations in there, or were we starting to implement a little bit more systems as time went on?
System implementation didn't really come into this until this week, so it was a lot of more emphasis on conditioning and who can battle for the puck. Those are the things that ultimately win games. The systems are great, everyone should know them and buy in. They're nothing complicated or something these guys haven't seen before, especially coming to this level. Everyone's played good hockey or been coached by a good coach at some point, so it's really just seeing at that point early on in training camp, still day 3, day 4, seeing who could compete at a high level.
Well, and I know you didn't want to overload the guys with systems too early or anything like that, but the fact of the matter is, it is going to be a quick turnaround. Starting from training camp, it was 10 days before, our first puck drop. So, is there any concern, or was there any concern about, how are we going to cram everything in such a short amount of time, or, what was the plan on that?
This takes 3-4 months to really plan out and make sure it's all kind of done properly. You consult other people who've done it more times than I have. That's one of the big things. I think I use my asset. My assets are my mentors. So you really emphasize using them and just asking them what they've done in the past, how they prepared for this situation, how do you teach this, and just leaning on them to really kind of help me guide through that type of situation, especially when it's my first real training camp to get under my belt. So you just got to lean on them to help you out. And I like to look at it as a kind of open-minded person. You got to kind of weigh out things. There's definitely things that I would like to emphasize more going into another one, and then maybe a little less on other things. But ultimately, I think it went pretty well.
All right, well, we're going to head to a quick break, but we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about the inter-squad game, because that gave you a really good idea as to, exactly what you've got out there and what your roster is going to end up looking like at the end of the day. So we're going to head to a quick commercial break and then be back right after this. You're listening to the Zydeco Coaches Show here at 1717 Casino.
Ultimate game day experience? Come to the Queen Casino in Baton Rouge. Wall-to-wall TVs mean you'll see every touchdown in HD. Place your bets and feel the thrill of every play with our DraftKings Sportsbook. The Queen Casino, where every moment is a win.
Does he think he's better than us? We'll find out. Think you're better than us with that fancy stick work, huh?
Buddy, watch this.
Yeah, you got good hands. But watch this. Let's get out of here, MJ.
Hey, I'm Dr. Donald. Scott, come on in, Scott. Thanks.
Scott, you ready? All right, you can have a seat right here.
All right, Scott. We're going to get you all fixed up today, okay?
A few moments later.
All right, Scott. Good as new.
Thank you, Dr. Donald.
You're welcome. Welcome to Advanced Dental Care, official dentist of the Zydeco hockey team. Whether you're a hockey player or not, we can give you the perfect smile.
On Seafood, our weekend brunch isn't just a meal. It's the moment you've been waiting for all week. Begin your legendary weekend with brunch favorites, like our shrimp and grits. crab cake benedict, and of course, bottomless mimosas. Let's be honest, the party doesn't start until Don Seafood hits the table. From our team at Don Seafood, we want to thank you for the past 90 years and cheers to many more together.
Run for Chirac, but he can't bury. Chirac grabs it back, curls away from his check in behind the net, picks it up on his stick, and he gets the Michigan! Scott Chirac, a highlight reel goal!
All right, folks, we are back with Coach Everett Thompson. Quick shout out to a couple shout outs, actually. First and foremost, to our booster club, who has been so incredible throughout the training camp, just helping the guys out and feeding the guys. And I know there's a Facebook post today about exactly how much food there was, and it was an absolutely incredible amount of food. So let's see. 440 waters, 346 pieces of fruit, 320 cookies, 245 bags of chips, 156 yogurts, 96 brownies, and a whole bunch of other food as well. So phenomenal job by our booster club. Thank you guys so much for helping us out throughout training camp. Just a quick recap for those of you on YouTube. Had a glitch in the computer. I know you guys caught the very last bit of that first segment, but just kind of went over training camp, some of what I talked about last week. Just some of what Everett had seen as well. And now we're getting into the inter-squad game here, where it really was your first scenario for not just yourself, but for the guys to have a game type of scenario. What were some of the biggest things that you were hoping to get out of the inter-squad game?
So we went over a few like little system things before, so you want to see the implementation of those things, along with like we go back to the compete level, conditioning and things like that early on. That's what those games are really good for, to see, and then natural ability, just who can play.
Well, and the boys, they were split up into two different teams. We got Team Brickyard South and Team Bayou State Labs. And obviously you want to get the rosters somewhat evenly matched, but did you also try to get guys together that you thought could possibly be line mates somewhere down the road?
Yeah, 100%. You want to see some line combinations that you might be able to tinker with throughout the season. And then you try to go from there, competition level of making the teams as even as possible. So it's a little bit of both.
The game had great pace right from the get-go. I thought the guys treated it the proper way, especially knowing that quite a few players had not yet made the team. It's easy in those kinds of scenarios when you're playing against your teammates to kind of take a step back, right, or not go to the fullest extent. Did you feel like the guys really kind of gave their all out there?
Yeah, no, I think there was a high compete level there. I think the guys knew that they were ultimately trying to earn a spot on the team, so I think there was, there wasn't a lot of friends out there per se. They were out there to earn a spot, so I think that's what they ultimately did, especially the guys that are still here. So, it's just a compete level thing at some point.
Oh, and there was one point where Elijah Wilson and Jay Cox looked like they were going to drop the gloves, and then I saw them, after the game, talking as if nothing had even happened. So it's kind of cool to be able to have that separation. It's one of the great things about hockey. One of the things that you did mention in your pregame meeting to the guys was that you really wanted to see some structure in that game, not just like you had mentioned earlier, not a men's league, kind of thing. How did you think the boys handled the structure side of things?
Good, we really emphasize in the D zone. That's one of the places that we try to use our structure the most. And then, a couple things in the O zone just to see, general, like I said, hockey IQ, just to see who's naturally going to the net, who naturally makes plays, things like that. And then, like you talked about earlier, who has some chemistry with each other with those line combinations that we put together. So, they get a lot of ice time in that game, so you get to see a lot of different things.
There were a couple of instances where things started to get a little heated, especially towards the end of the period. Were you hoping to see a little bit, not so much of the aggressiveness, but more so just kind of that passion out there?
we got a very passionate team. A lot of guys here that really like the game, really love the game. So at this level, that's what you ultimately need to win and be successful. It's like we've talked about before. These guys aren't making millions, so who has the most heart sometimes really can succeed in these situations. So.
You ended up joining me for the second period in the broadcast booth, which was phenomenal for all of us. Things seemed to open up a little bit more in that second frame. What did you see change from the first to the second that might have caused things to be a little bit more wide open in that period?
Once you get a little bit more tired, that's when the breakdowns happen. So that's ultimately just what was going on. It'd been 4 or 5 days of ice in a row. Some guys had just came back from other training camps, so you just see things start to open up, like we talked about when the conditioning starts to get tired. They're getting more ice than ever, so only 2 lines on each team, so they're just constantly playing and going. So it's one of those things where you're going to see some tired bodies throughout the game, especially towards the end of periods. But at the end of the day, that's kind of where the most important parts of our games and starting tomorrow really count. So.
Yeah, well, there was a 5-goal second period, so clearly things broke out quite a bit. And in the third period, I feel like it started with the same pace and energy. Did you feel like it was starting to kind of taper off towards the end, like the legs were starting to get a little heavy, or did you see the same type of pace?
I mean, I think our conditioning, like I talked about earlier, will be one of our strengths. I don't think there was a ton of drop-off even when it did start to open up a little bit. I think it wasn't anything particularly to worry about. At that point, some of the guys had already played over 20 minutes, so I mean, we'll see guys get in that range this year occasionally, but you try to keep them all around similar ice time. So a lot of guys were getting a lot of ice that game, so it's just a little different than a normal game like we'll see tomorrow.
Well, and especially too at the end of a very long week as well, a long and taxing week at the same time. So shout out to those guys for really giving their all out there. You ended it with a shootout. Did you want to go into the shootout at the end just kind of to end on something fun, or was it more of, hey, in a situation, if and when a shootout does happen, I need to know exactly who I got to go with?
That exactly. That's the real thing you're looking for, because if you don't know, now you know. We're not doing the overtime. We're going right into a shootout this year. So, and then after the first 3 shooters, one person can repeat. So if someone's got a hot hand, we call it the Oshie rule in hockey. I did it back when he was on Team USA there, and helped us win a game there once upon a time. So it's one of those things where you want to find who can score goals in those situations, and if someone's hot that night, you might have to ride them. So
TJ Sochi, I think, is what he was called there after a little while. But at the end of the day, culmination of everything on Sunday, what were your overall thoughts on how the game had went, and kind of based off of your expectations as well?
No, I thought it was a good game. I thought it was competitive to watch. I thought it was good for the guys to get in that, like we talked about, that game situation, get a little bit more of a game-like look and a game-like feel to things instead of a practice scenario. Some people got to come to the game and see it, which is always awesome as well. So, I mean, I thought it went well.
Were there any particular standouts to you from that game, whether it's an incoming player or somebody who's been here for a while? Is there anybody that kind of stood out, or was it a little bit of an even playing field?
I think it was a pretty even playing field. I think tomorrow we'll let our standout guys do the talking then.
I like it. Practices started out this week, where you really started to kind of dive into systems and things like that. Are you starting to see the guys starting to get into a little bit more of a routine and starting to kind of fall back into, hockey season mode?
Yeah, especially with the group we got going forward here now. We got a competitive group here. A lot of these guys are coming from different programs, and we're trying to get this thing to mesh as quickly as possible so we can have a team that plays together by tomorrow.
Well, and we finally do have our roster for opening week here, and all these guys worked extremely hard to get to this point. How hard was it to make those cuts, those final decisions to get to this point on the roster? Because I know there were quite a few guys that were sticking around for quite a while there.
It's one of those really tough decisions you got to make. Ultimately, I call them growing pains. To get better, they're one of those pains that you just got to go through. never gets easier, and ultimately it probably never will as we go forward too. They only get harder, but these are the decisions you have to ultimately make to have that success that we want. So I mean, it's one of those things that just comes along with this business.
All right, we're going to get into game week here right after this commercial break. We got 3 games in 4 nights coming up, so hope you guys are ready for hockey season because she's coming up in pristine fashion. So we'll be back after these commercials. You're listening to the Zydeco Coaches Show at 1717.
Men's Network started when I went to a computer company that Everett organized. At that point, I had never met anyone that was as good at computers. And by 8th grade, we figured out that this is something that we could do professionally.
So we moved to Baton Rouge to go to OSU, and that's really where our business got planted.
Give immense a call. Let us show you how IT should be done.
So come on, show me what you got. You dancing with the juggernaut. I done had to fight for every last damn thing I got. I don't care about your feelings or if you understand me. All these things that I do to feed my family. So who in the hell you think you're playing with now? You don't around and let the wolf out. And I'll be prowling while you sleep. You were playing for fun, I'm playing to eat.
Ultimate game day experience? Come to the Queen Casino in Baton Rouge. Savor game day platters and snacks, plus drink specials at 1717 Kitchen and Cocktail. So come out for game day and let our team make you the MVP. The Queen Casino, where every moment is a win.
For over 90 years, Don's Seafood has been a Louisiana staple. From the finest Gulf catch to the most authentic Cajun recipes, our commitment to quality and tradition is who we are. Enjoy favorites like our gumbo, jacked up shrimp, seafood salad, steak, and of course, our signature seafood platter. Don's is more than just food. We're a celebration of flavor and family. From our team at Don's Seafood, we want to thank you for the last 90 years and cheers to many more together.
Run for Chirac, but he can't bury. Chirac grabs it back, curls away from his check in behind the net, picks it up on his stick, and he gets the Michigan! Scott Chirac, a highlight reel goal!
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Getting into game week here. Finally, the puck is about to drop. And I think the weather knows as well. I woke up this morning, it was a brisk 59 degrees and windy. It felt just like home. I don't know about you. But yeah, 3 games in 4 nights here. It's one heck of a way to get back on the horse. So, and we're jumping right into the gauntlet. So, how do you have the guys prepping for such a long weekend of hockey?
That's what training camp is for, right? We made it as hard as it is for a reason. Like I talked about, we want our practices to be harder than games. So, honestly, jumping into 3 and 4 shouldn't be much for these guys to handle. They should be prepared.
We've mentioned systems and structure and things like that a couple of times. And, once again, it's going to be a quick turnaround. What are some of the most important things that need to be down pat by the time that the puck drops on Thursday?
The guys just need to be in sync. They just need to know that they can communicate to each other throughout the process of the game, and that at the end of the day, we're all in this together. There's 20 guys in the room. There's 16 skaters, and 18 guys in the roster tomorrow that'll take the ice, and they're all in it together. We win and lose the team, and that's the best part about team games here. It's not one individual that it falls on here. Like we said earlier, as long as everyone pulls the rope and does their job, we don't promise wins and losses, but hopefully we do the things that will give us the best chance to win.
We start everything out with the Mississippi Seawolves on Thursday and Friday night, and then have what will probably be a much-needed day off on Saturday just to get some R&R before going up against our newest rivals, the Monroe Moccasins. Not every team plays the exact same way, obviously, so we have to have some different game plans in order to combat that. So how much are things going to change for you from a systems perspective between those two teams that we're playing this week?
The nice part about Monroe is we got to look at them last weekend, so we got a little bit of an idea. It's a very small sample size. We'll break down film before we play them. They play Friday and Saturday as well, so it's a clean slate for everyone in a sense, in my opinion. Going into this year, I know that Mississippi has a new coach, so it's going to be something different that we haven't seen. With that said, I think the structure starts from within, so we want teams to play to how we are playing, not so much adjust to them. So we'll make adjustments as needed, but ultimately we're trying to throw things at teams that, favor our style of play.
If you guys missed that Monroe game, they were the team in white. Joke is both teams were wearing white over the weekend. So, all right, so go into Mississippi here real quick. They played two exhibition games this past weekend up against Blue Ridge. Both of them were relatively high-scoring affairs. 6-5 loss for the Seawolves that first night, and then a 7-6 overtime win on Saturday. What were some of the names on the roster that you had circled already going into those games?
Well, there's some familiar faces over there, so I think we kind of have an idea of what we're playing against, not only from an aspect of guys that were there last year, but guys that were in our own room last year that are there. So, it'll be a good little rivalry to start us off. Obviously, they're right down the road from us, and we see them a ton this year, so you really want to set the tone in something like that early on. And, they have a good team, so we're going to definitely have to take them very seriously, and we're going to definitely be prepared.
Seeing that there was so much goal scoring is a major point from an offensive perspective, just to kind of start throwing the puck on net and see what happens?
Not necessarily. We know that they've got some guys that can produce. That's one thing that I have no doubt in. They'll have some guys that put up some numbers this year. Our ultimate goal is to make sure that when they play against us, they have a hard time doing that.
Defensively, I know obviously we're going to be on our toes a little bit as well, seeing that they can't put the puck in the back of the net. What are your biggest focuses inside the defensive zone that we want to make sure we're keeping on?
There's always little things you do. Stick on puck, keep with your man, stay within yourself in the net, just things like that really, put you in a good position defensively to ultimately win puck battles and get the puck out of our zone. That's the real goal here, is to get it out, right?
Like you had mentioned before, we're going to see these guys quite a few times throughout the season. So is there a thought of, after those two games, to kind of leave it in the back of their minds of, God, I can't believe we're going to play Zydeco again. I can't believe we have to play them X amount more times. Is there kind of a thought process on that? Or
I think you always want to leave an impression no matter what. That's kind of the idea, that you play hard and then teams will remember. I think that's what teams really will think back on, are the teams that outwork them, right? I mean, you can throw systems at teams, whatever, but the teams that ultimately will really work hard and outwork opponents, and those are the teams you talk about. Those are the ones that you look on your weekend schedule and you go, ooh, that's going to be a tough weekend.
Monroe pulled the short straw and opened up their inaugural season against the Athens Rock Lobsters, who have quite a roster on their side of things. But what did you get out of the two games that they played this weekend against Athens?
Good. Both teams have really good rosters. If you look at it from that breakdown, I mean, they got some players from some new faces to the league per se. Not necessarily to pro hockey, and they got some both teams have some guys that put the puck in the back of the net, and it showed. I mean, both teams had a couple goals on Friday, I believe it was, and then Saturday they came back. It was a much closer game, I thought. But the compete was there for sure. It's one of those things where it's early in the season. Finding systems isn't exactly always going to be standoutish right away. It's right away early, like I talked about. It's going to be more of the compete factor and just willing to work type of thing. So I think both teams obviously are still new and they're finding their feet as well. So I think it's one of those things where you'll find the identities maybe in a couple of weeks of these two teams. Some of these other teams are a little bit more been in the league for a while, so you know what to expect from them on a week in, week out basis. Like I said, they're new, so it'll be interesting to see where we're at in a month.
That you actually kind of took the words out of my mouth. How much can you chalk some of these scores up to it being so early on in the season? I mean, take a look at the NHL. The Edmonton Oilers just got their first win of the season yesterday. Connor McDavid hasn't even scored a goal yet. So, how much can you chalk a lot of this up to just kind of early season antics?
You want to have a hot start. I don't care what level you're at, what team you're on. You always want to win early. It's what we talk about is they're easier games to win. They become more meaningful down the stretch, per se. So, I mean, if you kind of have a notion or a sense of urgency right away that I think we should be able to find right away because, I mean, we didn't make the playoffs, right? And we did push at the end to get there, but ultimately we failed. So I think it's one of those things where our guys got to watch teams play a couple more weeks, and that builds a little bit of I call it a callus, right? I mean, it starts there, then you get 6 months to let that kind of build, and that's, I think, kind of the mentality that a lot of our players have, especially the guys that are returning, and I think it's one of those things where the guys that come in, they kind of see that right away, that there's a hunger level here, there's a sense of urgency right away that we have to be good because, we don't want to be in the situation that we were where we're fighting and clawing, not that you ever can be comfortable in this league, but you definitely want to put yourself in the best position, and it starts early.
Well, you had mentioned it. The first game for Monroe was a bit of a blowout, 7-2 loss, but they did come back in Game 2 and kept it close. It was 3-2 until middle of the third period. What were some of the things you did notice that they had done differently in Game 2 compared to Game 1?
What they did differently, I mean, a couple of the goals early on in that game were just good bounces. In the first game, you can ultimately say there was just a lot of puck luck in those games, and that's what's going to happen. Sometimes the puck's going to find really good player sticks in good spots. That's just how hockey works some games. The second night, though, I think is a good response for a team that's, like we said, trying to find their footing. It's ultimately how you respond to those types of things. 7-2 loss, they come out the next night, they really compete and show that, they're not just going to go away. So that's one thing I'm sure that they're, happy about at the end of the day. And, if we were in the same boat, we'd want that same thing. Like we talked about earlier, we don't promise wins and losses, but ultimately you want to put yourself in a good situation to do that, and that's the process you take.
Monroe, one of the biggest stats that stood out to me was the fact that Monroe had a grand total of 61 penalty minutes in both games combined. How important is it going to be for our guys to keep a level head and not get sucked into any retaliatory penalties or anything like that and just continue to have power play after power play after power play?
Discipline does play a factor in games. I mean, you have, like we talked about earlier, I think if you have a team that knows what the line of accountability is, I think you can kind of help wrangle that in a bit. You want to have guys that play on the edge, and like I talked about earlier, we got some really passionate hockey players here that really play right on that line, and we want that. But we also want guys that know that line, and they're not going to go over it too often. Sometimes it's going to happen. It's the game. We call it the wires are crossed sometimes, right? But you want to control it as much as possible.
All right, so that's our weekend. We've got Thursday at 7:05, Thursday and Friday at 7:05 against the Mississippi Seawolves, Sunday at 3:05 against Monroe. It's going to be a phenomenal start to the season. We talked a lot about the guys and how they're doing and how they're feeling and everything like that. What about our coach, E.T.? Your very first full season as a head coach of the Zydeco. How are you feeling going into the opening weekend?
Probably could use a little bit more sleep tonight here, but we're ready. I think ultimately it's getting the guys ready, and I think we have a few more things I would like to, like I said, go over and implement. But at the end of the day, they're going to be prepared to compete, and that's what ultimately I think is going to win these games this weekend. So.
Are you still kind of getting the anxious jitters, kind of like you did when you were getting the gear off and getting the gear on and everything, or are you getting a little cool, calm, and collected?
You definitely have a little bit of jitters, right? I mean, anytime you're going into something like this to start it off, you're always excited. But yeah, you got to also, at the end of the day, it's an awesome thing we're doing here, right? We're playing hockey. We're at Baton Rouge. We're not in cold places right now, so it's all encompassing at the end of the day.
I love it. All right, we're going to hit our last commercial break and then finish everything out. You're listening to the Zydeco Coaches Show live from Queen Casino.
The 2024-25 Broadway at the River Center Theater season is simply the best, featuring 4 big, bold Broadway hits coming to Baton Rouge. The season opens with Shrek the Musical, the Tina Turner Musical, Chicago the Musical, and Pretty Woman the Musical. Get the 4-show package for as little as $235. That's less than $59 per show. Learn more at raisingcanesrivercenter.com/Broadway.
Church Funeral Services will handle it all with care. Church Funeral Services.
For the ultimate game day experience, come to the Queen Casino in Baton Rouge. Savor game day platters and snacks, plus drink specials at 1717 Kitchen and Cocktails. Wall-to-wall, state-of-the-art TVs mean you'll see every touchdown, Hail Mary, and big turnover in crystal clear HD. Place your bets and feel the thrill of every play with our DraftKings Sportsbook. So come out for game day and let our team make you the MVP. The Queen Casino in Baton Rouge, where every moment is a
For over 90 years, Don's Seafood has been a Louisiana staple. From the finest Gulf catch to the most authentic Cajun recipes, our commitment to quality and tradition is who we are. Enjoy favorites like our gumbo, jacked up shrimp, seafood salad, steak, and of course, our signature seafood platter. Don's is more than just food. We're a celebration of flavor and family. From our team at Don's Seafood, we want to thank you for the last 90 years and cheers to many more together.
Run for Chirac, but he can't bury. Chirac grabs it back, curls away from his check in behind the net, picks it up on his stick, and he gets the Michigan! Scott Chirac, a highlight reel goal!
All right, folks. That is it. Oh, jeez. Thank you. All right, that is it for us for today. Thank you to our crowd coming out. We've got some chants ready for opening weekend, I hear, huh? You got them going? Awesome. I want to hear you loud and proud Thursday, Friday, and on Sunday. All right. You want one? Yeah, hit me. There you go. What a way to end it. All right, it's finally game week. It's here. The season is upon us. We can't wait to see you guys at the Raising Cane's River Center. Thank you, everybody who came out, supported today. Thank you to everybody watching on YouTube, friends, family, and fans. Queen Casino, 1717 Restaurant. Thank you very much. All the staff here helping us out. Thank you. Albert, Ryan, Mark, everybody else behind the scenes. Thank you for making all this possible. Andy Petzinger, Everett, Thompson. Good night, everybody.